Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2024 and a new video today where we're going to take a look at some of the best Wonderkids in the FM24 beta version. What I've done to find these Wonderkids, because we don't have access to the in-game or full game editor yet, is go forward into the future, stop 5 years forward and 10 years forward and take stock of who the most valuable players in the game are, on the basis that even if they aren't the best player in your team, they are at least going to generate you a significant profit on those that you've purchased. Now, I've gone for a range of all budgets here, whether you're playing as Manchester City or PSG, or if you're taking on a smaller team and looking to find some value that you can bring into the club for the future. So hopefully this works for all budgets. I've basically just gone for the most valuable players at the 5 and 10 year intervals. So we'll start right at the top here. I mean, there's a few very obvious choices in here that a lot of football fans will be familiar with. The main one being Warren Zaire-Emery. Currently plays at PSG, would be very difficult to price away. He's definitely just for the very best of teams with large budgets that want to find the next great player. He is the best player in the world in the future by a mile. Definitely worth picking up if you can while he's still in his early teenage years. The next player is Scalvini, well known already to a lot of Football Manager players. Been at Atlanta his entire career. He's already got very good stats for a 19-year-old and he just continues to develop after that. Next up is Evan Ferguson. He's been setting the Premier League on fire lately, getting hat-tricks and performing very, very well since his move from Bohemians to Brighton. But he continues to develop and become one of the best strikers in the world. He's not too difficult to price from Brighton, but he does cost quite a bit of money. Again, one of those ones that's easier for the slightly bigger teams. Next up, Danny Vivian. He is 23 years old already, so he's not far off maturing into his best player, but he does still grow from where he is today. He's been at Bilbao his entire career, so he might be difficult to pull out from there, but at 23 years old, it's the right time in the game as it starts to be able to pick up a decent quality centre-back who can also play in defensive midfield. Now, one of the biggest stars in the future by an absolute mile is Yeremy Pino. I think he's actually the most valuable player 5 years from now. He has a valuation that tops £400 million, and that's already reflected in his valuation at the start of the game. He is a higher end budget player. But from Villarreal, if you're a bigger team, he'll be quite easy to pick up. If you're from a team more like Newcastle, you'd probably be able to get him a little bit cheaper as well. Because the bigger teams pay a higher premium. But he's definitely one to get on the list if you've got a chance of maybe unsettling him at the club. By expressing interest, you might be able to prize him away. Now, one very much for the future is Eli Wahi at RC Lens. Again, he's already on the radar. He's a 20-year-old striker with 16 finishing and 16 pace. He's got all the mental statistics that you want as well with determination and work rate and teamwork. But 34 to 102 million, I think you can probably get him down the lower end because Lens not necessarily one of the biggest teams in world football. Next up, Javi Guerra. He is another central midfielder. There's a lot of decent central midfielders, and he's just consistent across the board. He doesn't rely on one particular set of attributes to get ahead. And you can see just breaking into that Valencia team now, but he's going to become an absolutely excellent player in the future, and another one that I think you can get in that kind of mid-level range. Given that most football transfers are 50-60 million these days, he's a decent shout. Now, one of the ones that really got me excited when I went into the future was João Neves. Another central midfielder, but he's 18 years old, and look at some of these statistics. He's absolutely incredible already. 17 work rate, 17 determination is a dream when it comes to Wonderkids, and he can genuinely be bought reasonably affordably compared to some of the other players that you might be going after at the start of the game. But he, alongside probably Yeremy Pino, is an absolute must to sign because he is so good. Even 10 years in the future, he is one of the most valuable players in the game. So a definite must buy, a long-term investment there. If you don't have the money up front in the first season, you've got to pick him up season 2 or 3 because he's definitely going to bring you big rewards on the pitch and in the bank account. Another player at Benfica worth seeing if you can get 2 for 1 on is Antonio Silva. Another very solid across the board defender at this point in the game, 19 years old, always been at Benfica. They've got a lot of young talent in Benfica worth picking up. Next up is Elise Ben Sahir. In 10 years from now, he is absolutely phenomenal. I think he's another one that's valued about 300 million plus. So definitely worth picking up if you can. And again, that budget's starting to come down now as we work down this shortlist. Another player in France is Adrien Truffert. He's signed by Newcastle in the future, and he is the most valuable left back in the world by some distance. His stats are already great as a 21-year-old, so he'd fit straight into your first team if you're able to pick him up. And now we start to get into the genuine youth players. They're literally on youth contracts, 15 years old. Mikey Moore, one of the best young English players, and in the future becomes absolutely world class. So definitely worth seeing if you can pick him up. I haven't actually tried to see if you can sign him on the youth contract. I assume not. I don't think you can just approach to sign him, but definitely worth looking at that. And then you've also got Ethan Nwaneri, who's the other great English player in the future, 16 years old, currently at Arsenal. His stats are excellent. He's really versatile. You can train him to play pretty much anywhere in the attacking positions or in central midfield where he currently feels most comfortable. But you can see that work rate and determination above that 12 line, which is sort of the minimum if you're looking for reliable Wonderkid investments. Next up, Simone Pafundi, who is an attacking midfielder. Look at that determination and flair. Already at 17 years old, a real showman. Able to pick him up from Udinese as well, so under 50 million, which is a decent amount of money, because he is, according to my notes here, the third most valuable player in the world 10 years into the game. So definitely worth looking at. Then of course you have Lamine Yamal, who's been setting Barcelona alight this season in real life. He's surprisingly affordable in the game, but he really does become one of the best players in the world. I think he's the 5th most valuable in the future. That determination, that flair, the work rate is a little bit low, but everything else more than makes up for it. And he's just a naturally talented player to pick up. Then you have Badreddine Bouanani, who plays for Nice, joined them on a free from Lille, already got decent stats, 18-year-old Algerian. He's just going to continue to develop. And now we're getting to some of the more familiar names. Endrick, obviously extremely well known to all Football Manager players in recent years, becomes a world-class striker. He is joining Real Madrid in 2024, but if you can pick him up, if he's not playing regularly for Real Madrid, particularly if Real Madrid do sign Mbappe or something like that happens in your save, he can become available because he's only 16 and he doesn't play straight away for Real Madrid. So he quite often moves on after a few years from Real Madrid if he's not playing. So definitely one to keep an eye on. And then we're getting into potentially 10 million and below player signings. So you can see Turati here, Stefano Turati, currently on loan from Sassuolo, but he's definitely able to be acquired quite early in the game, and he just becomes the best goalkeeper that I've seen in Football Manager so far. The next big player is Kendry Paez. He's joining Chelsea in July, but again he made a lot of moves quite early in the game when I went forward in the future, which is why I added him to the list. He's one to keep an eye on because at 16 he's just not going to play for Chelsea, but he becomes one of the best players 5 years from now, and then again even 10 years from now. He's on both of my lists as the most valuable player, one of the most valuable players, so definitely worth keeping an eye on. Then you have Junior Krupi, who, again, you can pick him up quite cheap. So if you're a Premier League team, one of the mid-table teams, you'd be able to get him reasonably easily at this age. 17 years old, decent stats already, but he develops very quickly. Same for Asan Udraogo, who currently plays for Schalke, 4.2 to 12.5 million on him. You can get him very cheap, but look at these stats here. Determination 16, work rate 12. He is an excellent central midfielder. There are so many good central midfielders that go for high value in the future. Alan Virginius, yet another one, 4 to 12 million pounds. You can see there, 3.4 million pound recent signing for Lille, but he is definitely affordable. And then you get into the very cheap end of players. There's Claudio Echeverri, who plays for River Plate, one of those South American players that you can pick up early on. One of the more interesting one is Sver Houseeth Nijpen, available from Rosenborg for under £4 million. But he becomes one of the best players in the future. Definitely worth picking up. Even if he doesn't develop, you're definitely going to get a profit on a £4 million 16-year-old. And then finally, we have Gabriel Moscado, who does become one of the best players in the game in 5 years' time. He really does hang around as well. He's a defensive midfielder, but you can probably train him as a centre-back or central midfielder if you wanted to. And he has such consistent stats across the board. And again, basically free if you're a reasonably sized team. Now, what I'll do now, just to show you the outcome of a lot of these players, is go forward 10 years into the future. We can see what the valuations are next to a lot of the players. Maybe have a look at some of their histories for some of those lower value players in the future, and see if it's worth you investing in them in your own Football Manager save. Well, we are now 10 years into the future, and I have arranged these players by valuation, and it's no surprise that right there at the top you have Warren Zaire-Emery, still at PSG, worth up to £421 million. So like I said, if you are a Man City team, he's probably worth going after early on because he will retain his value and then some in the future. Ethan Nwaneri of Arsenal is the next player in there, but look at his versatility. He can play anywhere. He hasn't moved on in this save, but he could probably be picked up quite early on. Evan Ferguson is next. You'd always expect him to be near the top, currently at Chelsea. Then you have Simono Pafundi, one of the players I said was excellent in the future. Doesn't move on for some time, so he's definitely worth snapping up, and you can see there that his involvements in goals very, very high. Mikey Moore, another of the English players, very high up there, 100 to 390 million. And then you have Junior Krupi in there, up to 300 million. Lamine Yamal, again 289 million, still at Barcelona in this series. Eduardo, currently at Arsenal, the young German midfielder, moved for 39.5 million. Claudio Echeverri, who is currently at Barcelona in this save, but was signed for just 16.75 million, and that was several years after the game started, so you could definitely get him cheap. Jeremy Pino, he moved to Man City a couple of years after the game starts, 69 million, but clearly worth the money. Then Kendry Paez, he actually does stay at Chelsea. I thought he moved on, but he stays at Chelsea, but 17.25. I think you could pick him up not too long afterwards. João Neves, one of the other players I was very excited about, £58 million several years after the game starts. But look at those statistics. That is absolutely insane for a central midfielder. Endrick is next. We already know how good a player he is. 62 million. Real Madrid going for him. Antonio Silva, who another of those young Benfica players with phenomenal stats, moves to PSG, 58 million. Buonanni, how much does he go for? 80 million, but quite some time after the game has really got going. Scalvini at Liverpool, 87 million, a couple of years into the game. Naipan here, currently at Man City, 6.5. They pick him up. That's how cheap he is, and that's again a year after the game's begun. So definitely worth signing him. Seguier, 124 million, but again 4 or 5 years after the game has started. So there's definitely deals to be done here. Wahi as the striker, phenomenal scoring rates, 103 million he costs, but in 27-28. Moscado, another of those very cheap ones. You can see 3.9, then 9 million, then 39 million. His price suddenly ramps up, so worth getting in there quickly on him. Virginius, currently at Brentford, moves to Newcastle United for 48 million, but doesn't play very much there. But you can see he can have a phenomenal season here for Lille. He has had very, very good seasons, so he's definitely worth keeping an eye on, and currently doing very well for Brentford as well. Adrian Truffert, who I said became one of the best players in the game when he signed for Newcastle, definitely a very consistent left back, always above 7 in his ratings. His value's dropped a bit now because he's 32 years old. Same for Danny Vivian. He's still got excellent mental stats, but he stays at Bilbao before moving to Inter Milan on a free, so we don't really get to assess his value very much. Stefano Turati, also now 32, but you can see he's moved around quite a bit. Bayern Munich for just 16.25, then Barcelona, then Chelsea, and finally Javi Guerra, who's 31 years old, also at Newcastle, moves there for 74 million in the 24-25 season. So worth seeing if you can get him first season in the game. But all these players returning huge values. I mean, this is 11 years in the future, actually, and some of them still worth well over 200 million. Some of the others have better price points earlier on. You can see that the age drops at the top, but is higher towards the bottom. You've got players at 34 down there. So worth bearing that in mind in terms of if you're looking to just generate profit from some of these signings, or if you want to make them central parts of your own teams. But if you did enjoy this video, drop a like down below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new. But until next time, see ya.